it's really difficult to maybe have the awareness when your social skills are lacking. How do you get feedback?
Yeah, well, you've raised a great point, Casey, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about what you need to do as a leader to become more effective, and you mentioned the feedback. But here's the good news. The research that I've seen, and even some of Daniel Goleman's original research, pointed to two interesting phenomena related to emotional intelligence. One is it can be a learned practice. You're not born with high emotional intelligence or low emotional intelligence. You can learn to increase your emotional intelligence. How do you do that? As you said, by building it into, your leadership behaviors, the things you do every day. I really struggle with empathy, and I am going to make, this something that I work on as a leader, as I work through my day-to-day interactions with my employees, with my team. I'm going to really work on listening, trying to understand and demonstrate better empathy. And the good news is this is a skill set that you can learn on. The second thing that I thought was interesting in some of the original research from Goleman was this idea that the higher up you go in an organization, the more this social skills and the emotional intelligence matters. In other words, if you're starting out in a small business and a small organization and you start to work up into higher and higher leadership roles, as your leadership roles increase, the importance of emotional intelligence grows. So for those of you, at the emerging leader stage, new future leaders, really work at developing these skills, because it will pay off and it'll pay dividends as you continue to, increase your leadership roles and functions in organizations.
And how about the ability to influence?
Yeah, so the second skill that, you really have to have is the ability to influence. And it makes sense as a leader if we go back to our definition of leadership being a process by which you influence, providing purpose, direction, motivation, then to become a more effective leader, we've got to become more influential. When I talk to emerging leaders about this idea about becoming influential, becoming more effective at persuading others, some push back and are squeamish about this notion because they think, in a sense, it's manipulative. They get the notion of the slick, used whatever salesman idea in their head, and they think that somehow being influential is manipulative. And that's not at all what we're talking about. We're talking about the ability to recognize that you have to be persuasive. You have to build a good argument. If you're trying to drive change in your organization, you're trying to get your team aligned in your strategic goals and objectives, you have to be influential. Now, there's wonderful resources out there. One of the ones, Cialdini's book on influence, is probably one that many have used in MBA programs or undergraduate work. And Cialdini talks about these principles, about how we can use certain principles to increase our influence. Like, take, for example, the first time you meet someone new. What are you trying to do? You try to find that similarity, don't you? You look to try to find a way that you can build that similarity because people like people who are like them. And so we look to build that, and we can build our influence by, trying to, build that similarity and that commonality with another. Walk into your physician's office. Every room you walk in, what do you see? Plastered on the wall, up there are their, board certifications, their medical degrees, their college degrees, because we know authority and those kinds of expertise helps to drive influence. When people see that expertise, it helps them in becoming more influential. So again, there's principles like this, the principle of social proof. I talk with small business owners frequently, and typically they'll tell me they have one or two people that everyone else in their team looks at. And if those folks get on board, others will follow. Well, that's this principle of social proof. if we can begin to get people on our team sold on this new change effort and they follow the behaviors that we want, then others will jump on board as well. So it makes sense that if you want to be more effective as a leader, and it's a process of influencing, then we have to work at trying to be more influential.